Alright, the Mega Man Legacy Collection's coming to the Nintendo Switch in May. Finally, I can own a physical copy of Mega Man's 9 and 10.
Oh, really, fool? Really?
Oh, no, wait a minute. God fucking damn it, Capcom, this isn't a physical release, you liars. It's a physical copy of a digital download. After finding out the good news of the Mega Man Legacy Collections 1 and 2 getting a physical release for the Switch, I got more excited than my neighbor Terry does when he puts that weird sugar in his nose. But then when I found out the physical copy is gonna come with a digital download code for the second Legacy Collection, I got more angry than Terry does when he can't find any of that dang sugar. It's like finding out you won a $100 gift card to Circuit City only to get kicked in the balls right after. Capcom did the exact same thing on the Switch with the Resident Evil Revelations collections, where the first game came on a cartridge with a download code for the second game. Which would be fine if they sold it as Resident Evil Revelations with a bonus download code for the second game, but to call it a collection or compilation is a little misleading. When the Fractured But Whole came out with a download code for the Stick of Truth, it wasn't marketed as the Ubisoft South Park Complete Anthology. It was just sold as the Fractured But Whole with a little bonus. And the reason why Capcom won't put two games on a physical cartridge is because cartridges that hold bigger capacities cost more money. And I really don't want to support Capcom abusing the internet as a way to save money without even trying to compress their games, because I know they're not even attempting it. Super Mario Odyssey is less than 6 gigabytes, and Capcom even fit Resident Evil 2 on a 64 cartridge because they couldn't abuse the internet back then. Which is nice, because if you find a copy of that game at a flea market, then you'll actually be able to play it despite the 64 being 20 years old. But if the internet existed back then Resident Evil 2 on the Nintendo 64 would probably only have about 5% of the game on the actual cartridge. So if Capcom wants to save money on cartridges without being dicks, then they can at least try compressing their games. But let's assume that's not possible without sacrificing quality. Resident Evil Revelations 1 and 2 combined are more than 32 gigabytes. The highest capacity Switch cartridge available at the moment is 32 gigs, with a 64 gigabyte cartridge being in the works. So in the case of Resident Evil Revelations 1 and 2 being physically released as a dual pack, it's not even possible to fit both of those on a game card at the moment, even if Capcom wasn't too cheap to do so. But with the Mega Man Legacy Collections, we know for a fact that Capcom's just being cheap, because the file size of the first Legacy Collection is less than half a gig on the PSN, with the second game being about 5 gigs respectively, meaning that both games could have easily fit onto an 8 gigabyte Switch cartridge, which costs about as much to make as a standard Blu-ray for the PS4 and Xbox One. But rather than just putting both games on an 8 gigabyte cartridge, Capcom decided it'd be best to use presumably a 1 gigabyte cartridge, which costs about 2 US pesos, and making us download the second game to our internal memory despite owning a physical copy, which defeats one of the main purposes of buying physical in the first place, and that purpose is preservation. There's just something nice about owning a physical copy of a game knowing it's yours forever. I'm not going to be able to play the second Legacy Collection unless it's on the PS4 or Xbox One, since those versions are actually physical. And don't get me wrong, the PS4 and Xbox One are fine, but I won't be able to take the second Legacy Collection with me on the go unless I download it digitally before the apocalypse, which is kind of a bummer. I wouldn't have minded buying both the Legacy Collections on 2 separate physical copies or even paying a Switch tax, but this is where Capcom gets even more lame, because we already are paying extra for a physical version on the Switch despite Capcom only wanting to use a 1 gigabyte cartridge rather than an 8. And what do we get for paying an extra 5 cold hard American dollars? Well, besides a case with this shitty disclaimer ruining the box art, we get a cloth that probably costs more to make than it would have if Capcom had just used an 8 gigabyte cartridge. Who knows though, maybe Capcom's not cheap and they just didn't feel like making a menu for both games. I know everything I'm talking about's a perfect example of first world problems, and I am grateful that this is something in my life that I consider to be a dilemma, but my issue has less to do with the actual problem than it does with how easy this complication would have been to avoid altogether. I'm more amazed than I am angry, and I don't mind buying games digitally. I mean, if I'm being honest, the Mega Man Legacy Collections are the rare occasion where I'd actually prefer buying digital since I already own these games on multiple consoles. So for the Switch, I just want to be able to play Mega Man's 1 through 10 whenever I feel the urge to do so, and owning them digitally would be very convenient, which might make some wonder why I'm complaining in the first place, but my gripe boils down to if you're gonna make a physical copy of a game, then actually put the game on the fucking cartridge. Don't sell physical copies of digital downloads. If Capcom were just releasing the games digitally, then I wouldn't have any issues at all. Even though I like owning physical, at least it'd be honest. And even though this is a case where I actually do prefer digital, I still would have bought a physical version of the Legacy Collections at some point just to actually own Mega Man's 9 and 10. To be fair though, I have to give Capcom some credit for making digital versions actually being cheaper than the physicals. The Legacy Collections aren't the first game to do this, but more often than not, digital games are the exact same price as physical copies for reasons I can't even fathom, despite not requiring any production, shipping, or profits shared with retailers. And sometimes digital games are even more expensive since you can usually find deals on physicals if you look hard enough. So at least Capcom did have the common sense to soften the blow on influencing people to buy digital. But I hate when people talk about how digital media is far superior because of how shitty physical copies have been treated in recent years, with big day one downloads being mandatory. It's the same thing as Apple trying to trick people into thinking USB drives, DVD players, and headphones are obsolete by not including any of those things with their recent products. The only difference is that people are actually buying into the video game industry's attempt at tricking consumers into thinking physical sucks. But the problem is they're not supposed to suck. Companies are just abusing the internet. And Capcom, as well as other developers, need to stop dicking around with their physical releases on the Switch. Either put the full games on the goddamn cartridges, stop advertising dual packs as such if they're really not, or just divide your compilations up as separate copies so they can be owned and preserved permanently. Don't get me wrong though, aside from the malarkey, I am super excited for the Legacy collections coming to the Switch. I'm excited enough to where my disdain for Capcom trying to trick me into buying a physical copy of a digital game won't be enough to stop me from getting it. I don't like supporting tomfoolery, but goddammit it's Mega Man and the quality of the actual content's premium. I just don't like the distribution. There's an assload of bonus content on top of 10 amazing games, and in my opinion, the Legacy collections are the definitive way to play classic Mega Man, although it would have been nice if they hadn't divided the compilations up into 2 separate games, especially when the Anniversary Collection on the GameCube had Mega Mans 1 through 8 with both Power Fighters and a documentary. And why didn't they give us Mega Man and Bass or Street Fighter X Mega Man? Those are real Mega Man games too, you know. And it also would have been nice to get the Game Boy and Game Gear games as well. But anyway, what do you think about Capcom lying about giving us a physical release yet again? Do you think I'm being a dick for calling them liars? Or are you just as tired as I am at the internet disclaimer ruining box art because third parties won't just release their physical games properly? Let me know what you think in the comments below, and as always, I'll pin whatever I find most entertaining. Consider supporting us on Patreon with the new rewards tier now available. Don't forget to like and share this video to help this channel grow. And if you're a sexy, badass 400-foot tall robot monster, then go ahead and press the subscribe button. My name's Cameron, and I'll see you next time.
So I want to say thank you to your loyalty, thank you for your support.